Limited home rule gives the federal government the ability to intrude on our autonomy in many ways. I've said before, and I'll repeat, that I believe that the president's view of DC is shaped by his COVID era experience during his first term. And while this action today is unsettling and unprecedented, I can't say that given some of the rhetoric of the past, that we're totally surprised.
This concept that crime is down is really an old trope. They're using statistics in a way that makes it appear that crime is going down, but our rank and file officers know that we're going call to call to call for armed carjacking, stabbings, robberies, shootings, homicides, and the crime isn't going anywhere. And so we welcome the assistance.
And you're going to see a big change in Washington crime stats very soon. Well, not the stats that they gave, because they turned out to be a total fraud. The real stats, the stats went through the roof. You know, they had a man that was forced to put up stats like they were doing better. They're not doing better.
Anyone here live in DC or have family in DC? Because the thing that's confused me right now is, Trump has kind of took over DC, has the National Reserve and everything. And I'm wondering what is true and what isn't true. Now I'm online. I see people are saying, or at least all the major networks saying, crime is down. So why Trump is doing this? And I'm thinking, well, Trump has a lot of stuff. Why would he go out his way to do this if crime wasn't a problem? He's right there. Obviously, he has the ability to do it. Like, what is going on? So now it seems like it's a back and forth on, are the stats lying? Who's telling the truth here? Is there problems in DC? Is there enough violence that obviously the president wanted to jump in and do something? So I want to talk about it. I would see a few videos, and I saw one 7 days ago of why people believe that there is something going on, but let me show you what the mayor, Bowser, has to say about the situation. She's not happy about how things are going.
DC is questioning the Trump administration's intentions as it ramps up federalization of the city's police force. Now, at least 6 different states have sent National Guard members to patrol the streets of DC. DC Mayor Muriel Bowser says the president needs to start being more honest about his plans.
Mayor Bowser said here that she really doesn't make sense to her that thousands more National Guard need to come into the city when it seems like, at least given what she's saying, things have started to be under control, and the organization around what this federal takeover looks like had really started to come to fruition. And she seemed to suggest, Vlad, that the additional law enforcement and National Guard coming into the city is really just about the Trump administration's federal control over the district, moving in National Guard because they can, and also to use these National Guard troops to, yes, protect buildings and such, but also to then use the Metropolitan Police Force here to conduct immigration raids and to assist the Trump administration's immigration agenda. And she said the real solution to this is not some kind of federal takeover or using this Metropolitan Police Force for what the Trump administration wants to do here and removing people who are here illegally, but it's actual real congressional immigration reform, which we have not seen at a national level in a number of years. And she said it's really up to that to actually solve what it seems like maybe the real goal of a lot of this takeover is.
My question, is crime out of control or not? And I see Casey Cat saying crime is not down. They've already been caught underreporting. My nephew was mugged twice in the last 6 months and got his car stolen. He moved to Texas. I'm happy that he moved. I'm happy that he is safe. That is crazy. Dwayne says, yeah, police chief was not reporting violent crime. I'm in New York City, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, yeah, damn, they gotta bring the National Guard. Like, what's going on? And then every single news report, all the major news platforms and stations kept saying, well, crime is down, crime is down, crime is down. And the thing about stats, as much as we say numbers don't lie, they can be manipulated or not reported correctly. So she's complaining, saying things are fine now, so why more troops need to be deployed? But things are fine now because of him actually putting the troops. So I guess in theory, they were necessary. She is saying that it's overkill, but it shouldn't be necessary at all when you're telling us that the crime is down and everything is doing great, right? So there would be no reason to have these troops if things were great, but clearly something is up.
White House defended its takeover of the D.C. Police Department and the deployment of National Guard troops in the district, announcing a total of 465 arrests since the takeover began.
If not for this task force and their high level of coordination and the leadership of this president, there would have been 465 more violent criminals on the streets of this capital that you all live in every day.
So according to that DC police data, in the week before the takeover, 39% of all arrests were for violent crimes. Since the takeover started, that number is 36% of all arrests. It's still more than 200 people. It's important, but not a huge change.
Some messaging coming from the administration, the White House today, saying that D.C. is being made safer, and they put out some arrest numbers and numbers of guns being seized. How would you characterize this operation? Has it made D.C. safer?
MPD takes guns off the street every day and every week. And any time you have a surge of officers, I would expect that you have some results.
All right. As you know, the critics have described the current security presence and the general feeling in our nation's capital as being similar to an occupation zone. I'm not going to say war zone because war would be what we've seen in Kyiv or worse in Gaza, but an occupation zone where there are soldiers sort of milling about. I remember seeing something similar when I lived in Paris after 9/11, when the military was on heightened alert in that city. So what are you seeing, and what's the status of this federal surge today?
Well, there really is no, as you just kind of pointed out, for the reason of this, there really is no heightened alert for what people here, I think, feel like. And speaking with friends and people who I've met through my number of years in D.C., it seems like people kind of see a lot of this as performative and maybe an overreaction to some extent. Although, obviously, when you're walking around very crowded neighborhoods late at night, not necessarily dangerous, but just places where people go out constantly, it's certainly a relief to see law enforcement moving through the city and driving around maybe on streets that aren't always policed.
He just said a good amount of people believe it's performative, but then when it's late at night, they feel safe. That doesn't make any sense to me. So, and I don't know who else he's talking to, because I'm gonna show a video of other people and their reactions to the situation. But it's interesting. He just said, well, it's mostly performative, but yeah, when some of the people who go out late at night and they see some of these troops, they feel relieved. Those are two different statements.
Same time, Vlad, we've seen reservation numbers down. We saw the National Mall and parks throughout the city a little less crowded this weekend because I think generally people maybe at the same time as maybe feeling more protected if were they to go out early in the morning or late at night, maybe aren't necessarily as willing to go throughout the city. And I think we've covered at CBS by speaking with local business officials here who are just not necessarily happy with this kind of overarching reach of wanting to go live your life on a Saturday night and having to navigate this new layer of security protections throughout the city.
Okay, so he said that. So let's I'm gonna go show you guys another video of them.
Agents out on the streets of D.C. working to clean up the Capitol on behalf of the president's orders. Also, as they ramp up their efforts, we're reminded of the painful reality for the victims and families who have been impacted by violent crime in our nation's capital.
My brother is not a number. All these people are not numbers. They are humans.
It is frankly due to the grace of God that the 4 steps he did get in didn't kill me. While I was sitting in the hospital recovering, I found out my attacker had just been released from prison the day prior.
I go to those crime scenes. I sit with those families who the medical examiners is picking their bodies up off the ground. I deal with this. It is a problem. I deal with the fact of me having a paralyzed son, the mental anguish that he goes through.
I looked at Eric's ashes and I said, Eric, you haven't died in vain. Things will change so other people are safe when they go visit DC or work in DC. And that's my goal, to make people safe.
Griff Jenkins has more for us in Washington. Hi, Griff.
Hey, Jana, good morning. And while the stats show this 30-year low in violent crime here in D.C., the reality on the streets tells a very different story. And for many victims of crime, this is personal. Asia Tamimi lost her husband 4 years ago, and her sons have been victims of gun violence.
My husband first. It was the 1st of January of 2021. He was trying to help an elderly man, and he was stabbed to death. My son, somebody came up behind him and shot him 8 times, twice in the head, 6 times in the body, and he's a paraplegic now. So believe me, gun violence is personal for me.
When you hear from city leaders and others that crime is actually down, are you seeing that?
No, I'm not seeing it. We're seeing carjackings, the violence in the communities. So we were advocating then for the National Guard to come out. but they said it was no need. But think about how many lives could have been saved just having them on the scene.
So this is where it is, and this is back and forth between who you believe. And you can say this is anecdotal evidence. This is just a few people who obviously are victims of violent crime. And then you have the mayor and the police chief saying that we have 30-year lows, like as if they're really doing well with how they handle crime. And a lot of these stories seem to be random or just acts of violence. It kind of reminds me a little bit of New York City. I know they say crime is down here, but in terms of being safe taking the train, a lot of people are not safe taking the subway in New York City because of the mental health issues, how you will be a possibility of being attacked, being robbed by a mentally ill person, and it's not personal. They don't even know you. They're upset, they got issues going on, and then now you're being a victim, you're a victim of a crime. So again, we're having some going back and forth. Who is correct? Is there some kind of issue? Now they're saying, according to the stats, it's a 30-year low. So something must be going on with the stat.
Violent crime continues in D.C. Last night, a man was shot and killed in Logan Circle in Washington, D.C. Meanwhile, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser is firing back at Donald Trump for sending in the troops.
I believe that the president's view of D.C. is shaped by his COVID era experience during his first term. It is also true that we experienced a crime spike post-COVID, but we worked quickly to put laws in place and tactics that got violent offenders off our streets and gave our police officers more tools, which is why we have seen a huge decrease in crime.
A huge decrease in crime. Let's bring in the chair of the D.C. Police Union, Gregory Pemberton, and he joins us this morning. Gregory, great to have you here. I guess my first question is, why do you support the president's takeover?
Ashley, thanks for having me.
Sure.
We completely agree with the president here that crime in the district is out of control and something needs to be done about it. This concept that crime is down is really an old trope. They're using statistics in a way that makes it appear that crime is going down, but our rank and file officers know that we're going call to call for armed carjacking, stabbings, robberies, shootings, homicides, and the crime isn't going anywhere. And so we welcome the assistance, and whether that's federal agents or the National Guard, we'll use it. We'll do whatever we can to get bad guys off the streets and try to keep citizens of the district safe. Our concern here is that this is a temporary measure. This is only going to last for 30 days, and then the feds and the National Guard will be on their way, and we'll be left holding the bag. Our agency right now is an authorized strength of 4,000 sworn officers, and we're currently sitting at 3,180 with more than 800 vacancies for the position of sworn police officer.
Okay, so you see right there, and this is the union chief that represents most of the, I'm gonna say probably most of the police officers in the area. Now, they're down hundreds of jobs, vacancies, meaning that the other cops gonna have to do overtime, they're gonna have to work longer, right? Just what are you saying? Mandatory overtime. I believe cops, at least in New York City and corrections, overtime is mandatory. So if they're saying you have to stay another shift, you have to. I'm assuming it's probably similar for this in case, you need cops, right? So you have 700 vacancies, and they're still saying they're going call to call, the robbery, carjacking, stabbings, shootings. So the idea that crime is down is not accurate. So why the stats are not reflecting that? That's the question.
And that's the main reason why we can't keep these streets safe. The department relies on 2 million hours of overtime every year to try to close this gap.
2 million hours of overtime. How much money is that? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
So the underlying issues of the laws that have been passed by the D.C. Council, we hope that this 30 days gives some insight into from the feds to see exactly how terrible these laws are and how they've destroyed the police department, so that we can work to get those things corrected.
D.C. Police Commander Michael Pulliam is under investigation for allegedly changing crime statistics to make it appear that violent crime has fallen considerably. So I guess the question is, has crime fallen or not? And based on what you just told us, it appears that crime has not fallen.
I don't think so. And that's a very interesting aspect of the story that doesn't seem to be reported, is that they have a command staff official who's alleged to have been going into police databases and changing felonies to misdemeanors to try to keep these crime numbers down. Listen, I know Commander Pulliam, and he's a stand-up guy. What I suspect is that this is a pattern of practice, and this is something that's been ordered from the top to make sure the commanders are managing the crime stats to make it appear the crime is lower than it is, which is a disservice to the city, it's a disservice to the officers, and above all, it's a disservice to the victims of these crimes when we're not taking the proper police reports and investigating them and advocating for those proper resources.
The Justice Department is investigating whether Washington, D.C. police officials falsified crime data.
There have been complaints from the police union that the data is inaccurate. There's been reporting from other sources that there may be some discrepancies in some of the prior year's crime data, things that should have been classified more serious that were classified instead as less serious. But these are allegations that have not been founded in the courts. And the mayor has argued that D.C. crime data is pretty clear. It shows a 27% drop in violent crime year to year in the District of Columbia. Fewer robberies, fewer homicides.
That is outrageous, the allegation that crime stats are being altered to make it seem like neighborhoods are safer than they are. When you are a resident of that area and you keep in your mind, you're saying it's a 30-year low, but you go outside and get stabbed, or you're getting carjacked, you're getting killed. This is some of the stuff. It's basically crime reclassification. So the allegation is when officers log a crime, their higher ups are allegedly pushing them to downgrade that crime. So a shooting, a stabbing, a carjacking may be recorded as just theft or injured person to the hospital or felony assault, instead of the more serious crime. So that means that serious crimes are vanishing from the official stats, skewing the whole picture. Then you have the mayor sitting there saying, why do we need the National Guard? The stats say that we have a 30-year low and things are super safe. Then you have people talking about, my son was shot. My son is paralyzed. My husband's been killed. My kid has been stabbed. This is crazy. This is completely outrageous. So I don't know what Bowser thinks that she's doing. Even the police chief have when they say that things are great, but then the people on the ground, the cops are saying we are overworked. Some of the residents saying we are afraid, and I feel better with the troops around. And there's only 30 days before he has to reel them back in. So crazy situation happening out in DC.